And we are now live.
Does somebody want to push got it? So
Because
this is Senate Appropriations, and we're continuing our work on the 2023 big bill. We're going to start with the web report, and then Stephanie is going to kind of review some of the issues and maybe some of the language that we've got outstanding. And then ultimately we, as we move through it, not today, we are going to have some very difficult decisions to make relative to available funding. And I'm just going to state this publicly, but I think the way in which I'm going to ask that we work through any funding decisions is that we identify our first priorities for funding and how that would work. And I'll give an example. We know that we are already 12 million short of fulfilling our obligation or our commitment to stabilize our state college system. We've made that commitment, and Senator Baruth, remember the line from the cremation of Sam McGee, "A promise made is a debt unpaid"? Well, exactly. If we say that we want to honor that agreement and come up with the bridge money, that's a $12 million that has not been accounted for. If we want to say that we want to, open our courts and we need to have court security, that's going to be money that is not accounted for. We have a contract for labor for personal care attendants that has not been accounted for, and so we are going to have to look at what do we have for commitments in place, what programs do we have in place serving our most vulnerable Vermonters, the extent to which they have been recognized or not recognized in the governor's budget and in the House budget. I had one person say, well, we ran out of money, that's why we didn't do it. Well, I want to say we need to make sure that our first dollar is where our top priority is. And that's what we're going to be looking at, is those commitments and those systems that we rely on to serve Vermonters, whether we're talking about people with mental illness or whether we're talking about people with intellectual disabilities, whether we're talking about our, toxic school environments, whatever. The list is absolutely overwhelming. And so our goal, in order to get through Friday, is really narrowing down and setting priorities and making decisions around what we will fund and what not that it might not be good, it might not be something that we would like to do, but in this environment, we just don't have the money. And the base is really going to be our challenge, but we're also constrained on one-time money as well. So I'm saying that for the committee, but I'm also saying it because I'm well aware that this probably we're being listened to by many other people wanting to know about their request. And we have a list of all the requests. We will review them. The committee will look at them, but we're going to have to set priorities, and we're going to start really not with what's left and that's what you get, but what are our top priorities and to fund them and recognize those costs. With that, I'm going to suggest we start going through the web report, and then we will move on to some other areas that Stephanie has got either some draft language or just to review some of the pressure points that we're going to have to deal with as we're doing our work for the rest of the week. So it's all yours, Stephanie.
Before we jump into the web report, Sarah just had a back and forth with Peter Walk. We did actually change a definition. It wasn't in the section specific to the schools of a release on the PCBs. And so that is the source of that,
Who did it? What committee?
Well, we did it in the budget bill in a definition section after we set up the
then we're gonna have to come back. What we're talking about is, we thought we had PCB testing as it relates to schools. Somehow, I had mentioned to the committee that our housing agency was taken by surprise when DEC said that they were subject to that testing requirement. And of course, that has huge implications for any kind of downtown work, because those are or any of the buildings that would be subject to renovation and the housing goals that we've got out here. So I guess that language did something that we never intended in the first place. So we're gonna, and it was done in the budget. So I guess we're gonna have to come back and address
the section to tested schools, but then we also apparently it included an update to the definition of a release, and that definition of a release included all buildings, not schools, and that's how it got extended.
Okay, well, we'll have to take a look at that, because obviously that has huge implications for any of the housing projects. And I'm sure the Putnam Block in Bennington, for example, the New Avenue in St. Johnsbury, I'm sure the old jail that's about to open in St. Johnsbury, all of those projects that are all over the state would be.
Stephanie?
Yeah.
My memory is that we did two things. One was the testing mandate, which was limited to schools. And the other was that we changed the environmental hazard fund or emergency fund.
We did, yeah.
So that would include the PCBs, but we never mandated anything but the schools that I remember.
No, but apparently we include, when we did that, I don't know if it was from the drafters, if we thought about it, but because of that, the need to update a definition in statute came with it in a separate section. Mm-hmm. And that update of the definition of the word release, instead of being limited to the schools for the PCB piece, it included all buildings.
And we'll look at it again, but
yeah.
we looked the other day at the language about the testing. The word release didn't appear there.
No, and it's in the next section down. When we looked at the initial school section, it's not in that section. It is in that definition of release update that was drafted to go with the money that we put in for the schools in the environmental contingency fund.
So I guess it's something that, well, anyway, we've now found out
the source of it.
The source of why DEC is doing it. It's kind of surprising that we hear about it via our housing, or did we really, was that our intent? But this is what we've just discovered within the last 5 minutes. So it happened in the budget bill. It was language we changed, and that's just on our list of things that have to be addressed. So okay. We'll move on to the web report.
So this should, if folks are looking at it online or have it in hard copy, we always walk through this. This is our document for tracking all the money changes, and it goes through by function of government. We track all the House changes to the governor, and then we'll input the Senate changes and have a version for the Senate when we're done. So we start right at the top in the Secretary of Administration's office. This includes the appropriations up to date through the BAA in the first column, the Gov's recommended budget that he put out in January, and any House changes. Most of the sections have no House change. Most of the in most of the administrative areas, most of the change you see from 22 to 23 are your typical inflationary increases, the rollout of Pay Act, the operating expense increases, the charges against internal service funds that are embedded into folks' budget. But the purpose of walking through this is to raise any questions and identify the areas where folks are likely to have changes to the Senate as the Senate develops its position.
So why don't we keep going? B100, I think that's pretty straightforward. B101, House made no changes. That's very straightforward.
Jane, are we going to check these off as okay as we
Yes,
go on.
we will.
Yeah.
We'll close them out.
And we usually identify the ones that are still on hold.
Well, before that, when we have the administration doing a 10% increase for state employees, not counting the pensions and where we're putting millions, it seems to me that we need to look at what new programs some of these administrative folks are putting in here. They should be on the same level as others and not just agreed to, in my opinion.
Well, I think that absolutely, but I don't see for this one, there is anything new here. It seems to be, this doesn't seem to be a section that we would have that kind of discussion. It seems to be pretty much within.
Well, I don't know where the sections are, but I hope we don't, if we say we're closing something out, then we've already spent that money.
Well, I think for this, for Secretary of Administration, that's all we're doing is just the general increases. There's nothing new here. So it is the negotiated salary increases and benefits and service funds. So I
understand all that, Madam Chair. I'm just pointing out that as we go through this,
yes,
and the House made no changes, we make no changes. We've already made
yeah,
a lot of budgetary decisions that we may want to review.
yes.
I'm just concerned that everything the administration wants, the 10%, hurts those people in the community that are trying to work with the state and are funded differently, are asked to deal with a 3 or 5 or 7 or whatever percent.
And the only way that we're going to be able to deal with that is if we don't fund Pay Act and say, well, you only wanted to fund salaries and these benefits. But then that just adds to vacancy savings. So for some of these, there's not something as discrete as that. It's just the cost of what has been negotiated. So if you want to say, well, we think that Pay Act is too expensive and you're just going to have to accommodate and tighten your belt like you're asking everybody else to do, we would do it through Pay Act.
Yeah, but also there have been places where the administration has asked for new positions.
Yes, yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, all right.
Maybe we can't do the new positions the administration is asking for in certain places. I'm not suggesting that it's in administration here, the Secretary of Administration, general liability insurance. Obviously, there's little we can do about that. Or workers' compensation insurance. But we don't have to, we should put their new employees in the same boat as others' requests.
And as I say, the only way we could do that is just on the Pay Act piece.
I mean, we could be looking at the list in E100 of the new positions.
Yeah, we can look at that.
As we go through.
That's what I was talking about. Thank you, Stephanie. I didn't use the right term.
Oh.
I was looking at just new positions. Wherever they've created new positions, the administration has made a decision, and if we just blindly agree with that, then we're taking money off the table that might be used better in the communities.
Well, absolutely. That's one of the areas that, as I said, we're going to have to prioritize. But I don't think any of these here fall into that. I think probably the only one that we might want to talk about, if getting down to 105, would be around the creation of the technology fund. That fund, shortly after, as you know, the Secretary of Digital Services came right over in response to our, discussing this special fund. And basically he was suggesting that once we're appropriating money for IT, if that went into a special fund, that it kind of keeps a fence around it. It's not subject to the kind of mission creep or additional charges. And that if a project came in at less money, then it keeps that money there in the fund to be able to use for other purposes. There's a certain logic to that, knowing how things can there's certain leakage that can happen. So that was why they were thinking that there would be advantages to appropriating the money for IT projects in the way that the House proposed, because if a project should come in, $500,000 or whatever, some of these are quite expensive, then it would, then there would be money there that would be available to support other projects as they came along. So that was the logic behind the creation of the new fund. The only question I have is oftentimes the operating departments have to take their most experienced staff and move them to oversee the project and help manage that project, and how those costs, if they have to be backfilled, would be recognized, because right now they are embedded sort of in the cost of those IT projects. But that's the concept behind the special fund. Comments make sense and concept?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll have to figure out how the staffing costs get recognized.
I just wanted to step back to B102, which is the workers' comp insurance program. There is a deficit in that fund, and that ask is on the one-time ask, request list. The House did not fund the deficit.
Okay.
So it wouldn't happen here, but I just wanted to.
So that's on our list, the deficit. And how much is our deficit?
$6 million.
$6 million. Okay. So that isn't something we'd have to decide now. It's just on the list of potential areas of funding for one-times.
There are deficits in some of the other insurances, which would be basically B104. That is funded in the House proposal that we've been through earlier, but they chose not to do the workers' comp one.
Right,
That's a
so
much smaller deficit. That was $1,050,000.
$1,050,000.
Yeah, they closed out the deficits in the variety of other internal insurances.
All right, so that's obviously on the list. Stephanie's keeping track. So 102, we've got a $6 million deficit unaddressed. And then 104, other insurance, the House did fund that deficit. And then we kind of agreed in concept with the creation of the fund, and then the 16.7.
So the 16.7 is actually originates as general fund. It gets transferred into the new IT special fund in the D section of the bill, and then the appropriations come out of the special fund here.
And what are we committing to here with a 16.7?
There's a variety of projects, and in the language of the bill in section E105, we can run through them very quickly. Let's scroll up to them. The biggest one is the module in the agency of administration on its sort of next iteration of vision, and what it's called. Here we go. That one is 11. It's an enterprise resource planning system upgrade for core statewide financial accounting system and integration with the Department of Labor and Agency of Transportation. That's $11.8 million. That's the largest single one in the 16 million. There's 1.8 for continued implementation of the workforce information management system for property management at BGS. There's just under $1 million for a system modernization at fire safety to a platform to improve records management and public interaction, fire safety. And then there's 2.2 for case management at the AG's office. So
Are these one time or?
Yes, these are all one-times. Yeah.
Okay, okay, good.
So at this point, these seem to be needed to carry out the functions of government. So I'm going to close this out unless people feel these are not, they would not fall into the top priorities of government operation.
Tentatively, when we see the one-time list.
All right. Let's keep going then. 106, budget management. I see Adam Gresham's on. I guess he'd like to get paid, but you can see the increase here is pretty modest. And the House made no changes. Move, okay.
So 106 is the budget office, 107 is the operations.
Mhm.
Under Adam. And then we're in the HR.
So I'm gonna, unless people were close those out as pretty standard, nothing new there. Adam's got his thumbs up, he'd like to get paid. Human resources, 108. It's personnel, and I think that probably we do have to have a personnel, there's nothing new there, no initiatives. So move, close, accept that. And then we have the operations in human, that's again in human resources.
Yep.
And wellness, and that I think is pretty standard, doesn't look like too much difference there. And now we're down to libraries. We've really shrunk our core library system down to compared to what it used to be. Doesn't seem like there's anything. Was there something new there?
Was there a, I remember there was a, I think $17 million fund for physical upgrades or something?
Oh, that's in the capital bill, and that's under the capital funding era. That's a part of the 113 million.
And we are actually assuming that that's coming into this bill. as opposed to-
Yeah, I need to let Senator Benning know that we're gonna appropriate all that capital money in the G section of the budget.
The ARPA capital.
I mean, the ARPA, right, but that's G, isn't it?
It is in G, yes.
Yeah.
It would be in G.
And because that would be the 95 million for broadband, which is, we want to bring in those expenditures that are clearly eligible under that capital grant. So that would be the 95 million for broadband, the 15 million for libraries, and a small amount for what, connectivity. So
In-state parks, yes.
It's in-state, so that's what you're thinking of, Phil, is that, and that would support capital improvements in the libraries.
Okay, great.
This is the state library system.
No,
Okay. All right, now we're down to BGS.
Well, at B111.
Wait a minute, oh,
Tax
geez,
department,
it's very hard when the,
when it cuts at the very bottom of page.
yeah, when the heading is on a different page than the rest. So B11, tax administration.
So I've talked to Andrew Stein at the tax department. The assumption, if you're going to pass the child tax credit in some form,
We have to pay.
you have to have
administrator.
some administrative help to the tax department to administer that. They can absorb the platform and the IT changes that they need to be in the tax modernization resources that they have. But they do think they need at least 2 new positions. It's a $200,000 cost fully for the year. They could probably live with having them funded for about 3/4 of the year to begin with and then rolled out. So that would be about $150,000 if you did 3/4 of a year for 2 new positions. They would probably still go ahead and try and hire them for the full year and make it work within their resources.
Assumes that we're gonna, have we made a decision on that? I haven't voted on that bill yet, have we?
Well, it's next door, and it's gonna be, I believe that we will be passing some version of it. We've had some discussion about how we might restructure it a bit so that it's more progressive and come out with a little different cost. But I think that the general information that I've got is that that leadership in the Senate would support that a form of tax reduction over and above the varieties that were proposed by the administration, which were about 48 million. Now, the one thing that the governor did propose, and we've had some discussion about that, and that is what we do with sports betting and getting that language in so that we could actually start the work to move forward to implementing sports betting. And looking at our revenue projections out into the future with a growth of 2%, probably those revenues, and I think Senator Sears, you were looking at what other states right next to us were generating in revenues that that we know that Vermonters are betting through these systems, and that that you would support this as a way of addressing revenues, and the fact that it's sort of like the cannabis, it doesn't change. The reality is that Vermonters are opting to do this, and so it's a lot better to do it in a structured and regulated environment as opposed to what it might be happening now.
I agree. I just think the $2 million is very low for a full year, but I don't know, how long it will take to get it up and running.
Yeah. I don't know either. So I think what we're probably trying to do is some kind of language that would initiate that process. And then I know Senator Sorokin was taking some testimony in committee, and Wendy Knight was in here, but we're not the committee that's, gonna move forward first. So
but getting back to the tax credits or whatever tax relief we provide, that is money that's not available to help, for example, mental health centers, designated agencies, turning point clubs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this is one of the things, and that's why we've had some discussion around how we in the Senate would help moderate that benefit that would go out. And if we do it in the way that we've been talking about, it would be more front loaded so that families of lower income, where you get a lot more stress with finances, that the benefit would be greater there than, and probably taper out at a lesser income than what the House was proposing, which was around 200.
Yeah.
So I think we'll move forward with the tax credit. It's just whatever it looks like, it's still going to take some administrative support, and so this would be where the cost of those two positions would be reflected.
Just to finish because
So-
it's a refundable tax credit, as opposed to a tax credit that would be limited by your tax liability, it becomes a target.
And the House didn't put that in.
The House did not put that in.
No, they did not include that in their bill, what it would take to administer the benefit.
Well, that figures.
Yeah, so we'll make a note of that, because I think we will be passing something, and it will require positions to make it work. And as Stephanie said, this is refundable. This is not a tax credit that lowers your tax liability. This is similar to what the federal did, and it's a payment that would be issued by the tax department. And if we do the progressive, then it would be contingent, obviously, on what your income is. But also, it has to be overseen with more care, because there's always the prospect of program fraud, to put it bluntly. So you have to really, if you're going to do it, you've got to provide for program integrity as you start up the program. All right, so we'll move on to 112. administration, BGS, what happened here? Did they move some positions?
I don't know if they moved from positions or if FY '22 was lowered because of pandemic resources.
Or is this where the engineering?
No, engineering's the next one down.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's quite a, who has BGS? Do you know what caused that reduction? Adam, you're on. Can you tell us what, that's fairly significant. Was it position requests, positions being moved around? Was it, what would have caused such a significant increase from 800,000 to 1.2
On the admin line.
on admin? You're muted.
Sorry. Let me get back to you on that, Madam Chair. I don't remember. It was a bit ago, but I'll get back to you on it.
Okay, all right. If you want, you could send an email to Sarah Clark. She's in the room. And
Okay.
we'll come back and see what the explanation is. The engineering.
So the engineering's in 113 and now the new 113.1. So the remaining pieces that are paid for through the general fund in engineering are it looks like it's all basically the operating costs are remaining in 113 and the personnel costs are moving to 113.1. But they're all now in general fund dollars as opposed to.
And the net impact is.
It's practically the same as last year, 1.6 plus 2.7, 4.3.
Now, this gets into the comment about the freed up money that would be in the capital bill for engineering.
Yeah.
By having,
So this is a pressure off the capital bill because the general fund is picking up what was in that interdepartmental transfer through the capital bill.
and then the House, the administration wanted to take those savings to the capital bill and make it part of their capital.
So I think you would just spend less, it would, you would issue less debt.
So what the House did though was take the
freed up capacity
the freed up and
spend it in another
and
area.
spend it. So that's in the capital bill. But this right now is what we're doing is what we've done before in the past, bounce back and forth, and that is move the engineering costs into the general fund from the capital bill, because we would be bonding for these services. Otherwise, it was a way of freeing up some general fund to make the budget work in the past. So the House did agree to move the engineering. It's not a new expense, it's just where it's picked
just
up.
what pocket.
Yeah, which pocket we pay it out of.
Well, it's up some, couple 100,000. If you add the 1.67 to the 2.71, you're up compared to last year from 4,000,001 up to what, 4,300,000. So it's up a couple 100,000.
One's under capital projects and the other is just the general engineering, so.
Yeah.
No, it's consistent with the personal service line increases in many places.
Yeah.
So, I guess, do we want to agree that we will, there was always a lot of controversy whether bonded dollars should be paying for, BGS engineering. I guess we could close it out for now.
Yeah.
All right. Information centers, very modest change, nothing much here.
Good.
100,000, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, unless somebody says something, we're just gonna assume that, these are just really nothing much changed here. Purchasing, same thing. Postal service. Well, I guess that's cost has gone up, so that's,
58 cents for a stamp.
Yeah.
From
So-
53.
so that's, although obviously volume has gone down overall from what it used to be years ago with so much information going electronically. All right, so now we're on to 117 Copy Center. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that unless somebody's got something that they know more than I do. Copy Center.
Nope. Good,
Fleet management.
not
This
bad.
is not much change here.
No,
Internal service funds. One thing I would tell you is that we found out that as vehicles are ready to be sold or go to auction because they have met the time for being traded in, the Reach Up program has been had an agreement to acquire some of those vehicles to help Reach Up parents go to work or jobs. And we had some discussion and said that should purchase option should be extended to VR and to Mileage Smart, which is to help families with more moderate incomes get more fuel efficient vehicles. So
is
that's
that, is that good just for Reach Up families, or do other families
No.
on need be able to get those as well?
It would be Reach Up first, vocational rehabilitation clients, and the third would be Mileage Smart, which is to help low and moderate income families acquire more fuel efficient or plug-in hybrid. So it's a fairly wide range of
Yep,
potential households.
That's a good idea.
It doesn't require any language.
No, it doesn't. No, this is just something they have the authority to do anyway. I just wanted to, when we were on fleet vehicles, you may hear about it. Just wanted to make you aware that that agreement that was just for Reach Up has now been extended to those other two purposes. So federal surplus, I don't think we'll let that go. State surplus, nothing there worthy of much time.
I just want you to know that we did give Steve Klein a gift certificate to state surplus property as part of his retirement. And he used it.
I believe it. Steve was one of the best customers of surplus property you can imagine.
I believe they told us they'd never been asked for any gift certificates before.
I wonder why. It was one of the more clever gifts that he got. Property management, BGS. Fee for space.
Fee for space is a place where there are added positions.
Nope.
In E100, so if you wanted to sort of cross-reference and kind of.
Now, why did the House add that over the governor's recommend? Oh, it's a technical correction to reflect allocated amounts. So it looks like it's just to correct them.
How many positions are they recommending to increase in buildings?
They're in the Department of Buildings and General Services fee for space. There are 5 new positions being asked to be created.
I think those positions should go in the same box as other requests. And we'll deal with them.
Permanent positions or limited service?
They are permanent classified positions, and they may tie to they may have approved the positions, and then the dollar amount of technical correction was probably tied to them.
All right, so we're going to hold that. We'll hold that
Yep.
as part of the overall
Few.
review of.
They should be in with, whether or not my designated agency gets 0.5% or a full
If it's
percent.
helpful, 3 of them are for the new secure residential facility. you know,
That's correct.
for Woodside location. And then one is for a new Berlin public safety facility.
Right.
So they're, I think, positions associated with new facilities.
We don't have
Exactly.
the Woodside replacement facility.
I meant the Woodside, the Middlesex replacement moving.
Oh, the
to Woodside,
Middlesex,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so they are necessary to support the operation of those two facilities that are just opening up.
So the cost of them would be
So,
distributed into the budgets for those.
Why
why?
isn't the cost of them in mental health?
Because it's under fee for space. And ultimately,
So the charge to mental health for operating the replacement to Middlesex at the Woodside site would include, if that budget would include the fee for space charge, which.
so, are we getting kind of circular here? Because then those costs here should be billed to, DMH.
So they are on a square footage basis. This is an internal service fund, so the bill for the space will come to mental health and they'll pay it out of their funds, but the internal service funds are always a duplicate cost.
All right, so these are positions that are necessary for the maintenance and
Yeah.
cleaning and whatever for those facilities. One is the Middlesex replacement for DMH, and the other is,
Public safety is at Berlin.
Yeah, the Berlin Public Safety Facility, there's a utility mechanic for there, and there's also a maintenance mechanic for the Williston Public Safety Facility.
okay. So, seems like additional staffing when you're opening a new facility is pretty straightforward. Maybe we should find out why we need additional staff in those two areas. Okay, all
We're
right.
already staffing those places, right? Aren't we staffing the temporary one?
We are, and, but we got an explanation as to why the staffing, it's a larger facility for one thing, than at Middlesex, so it's more maintenance, and so that was why we were asking, what do you have for positions already to staff Middlesex, and why do you need more? And the answer we got back was, because the number of beds and the size of the facility is significantly more. Also that they would have a kitchen, which they don't have in Middlesex, because the meals are brought in from the psychiatric hospital. So it's setting up a very larger and more complete facility than the temporary one in Middlesex, which was temporary for what? Well, 2011, for a decade. So why don't we check on those two that are not associated with the
The two
facilities?
public safety ones.
Yeah.
I think that the Berlin one is at the old regional library that I think they're converting. So that I think is a new use of that. It's been.
And closed.
Yeah, and the Wilson one, I don't know if that's.
So we'll check on those two positions and hold that for now. The governor's office, not much there in terms of money.
No.
So let's see, so now we're on to legislative council.
And I don't know if you want to hold the legislative items open until we have a clear picture of the out of cycle pieces that are going to have a
And that
rollout
would be,
cost.
and those would be in council, legislation, and IT, joint fiscal, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna hold those open because those all relate to this NCSL study that would have an impact on salaries and trying to get this compensation more aligned and more rational, because the study revealed some very major discrepancies in compensation. And so whatever we do on that will influence the final numbers here. So let's move along to Sergeant at Arms. And is this where the car is?
So
It's out of one ton.
So the car is in language out of carry forward. So it's basically an existing resource already appropriated to them.
So that's not reflected here.
It's not reflected in the 23 number at the end there. It's,
So
I
I
don't
do
know
have
whether-
a question.
Yes, sure, Rich.
So if we change that, instead of having it come out of carry forward, so it was straightforward in a line item and people knew it was there, would it affect those numbers?
So the pilot idea would happen in FY '23, in order, you could appropriate the dollar amount for the annual cost here. You'd probably revert their carry forward, sort of stay in fiscal balance for '23, and then it would be embedded in their base budget going forward.
Yes, and if it, at least if it's embedded in their base budget, it's a line item in the budget moving forward. The idea of saying this is carry forward, I think confuses the issue.
But it's a 1-year pilot project. It's not, that's why they're doing it out of, if we approve it, that it's a 1-year pilot.
I thought it was a 2-year pilot project.
2 years?
2 years.
I thought it was one, I was told by the chief it was 1 year.
It's one car. I thought the pilots, they would do a 2-year piece.
But before we get into a lot of detail, this is going to be a subject of this request. It's going to be taken up. We have a joint legislative management oversight committee meeting on Thursday to review it. Also, if it's a pilot, how do you evaluate the effectiveness? What are the criteria that you are using to say it should be more than a pilot?
Well, and I would say once you get a car, it's never going to go away.
Well, that would argue for going your mechanism, and that is revert and appropriate, because in essence, to agree to this is in all likelihood leading to an ongoing base cost.
That's my argument.
Yeah, okay. So we will hold because we're meeting on Thursday.
This is over a 10% increase by just moving that forward. I'd rather see it, do it the way Richie explained when we get around to doing it.
Well, the car is not in this figure, just to confirm.
So that's on top of the 10, you take the 954 and then you go to 1,063,000, that's 110,000 almost. And so that's over a 10% increase, because 10% would only be 94,000.
So
That's what salary and benefits would be in that vicinity.
but you're also comparing it to 22, which is right.
A very
now.
low year.
So I think the expectation is that you come up more to normal operations in the Sergeant at Arms going forward in '23. You didn't have the full.
You didn't have public
bookkeeper.
hearings, you didn't have a lot of the costs.
Yeah, so that's the,
So that's why
it's a little bit
FY
harder.
'22 is atypically low because of the fact that we weren't here most of the time. There weren't the public hearings, et cetera.
I don't know if they have pages the first 6 weeks of the year.
No,
You have a lower, we have a slightly higher Capitol Police presence, but we have lower doorkeeper numbers and things like that.
so we're gonna,
Hold this.
it would have to be changed if the decision was to do a reversion and a direct
You're gonna
appropriation.
do it differently than is proposed by that. If JLMC recommends the pilot and you want, and you recommend, funding it in a different way than the way the House has laid it out, then you would change this
Yeah.
section.
So we can hold it pending the meeting.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Lieutenant Governor, that's up a little bit, not too much.
How do the candidates feel about it?
I haven't checked, perhaps we could reduce it accordingly. I think we'll just let it go. It doesn't seem like it's anything more than just the inflationary and salary. Auditor of accounts.
And the House did increase that spending authority on the internal service fund line that was requested by the auditor.
Did the auditor want more?
No, I think this was all we wanted in terms of his base budget.
So this is internal service funds to fund an existing position. And the position, I know what it was. They had to increase the classification in order to attract candidates. And so it increased the cost. If I remember the auditor's testimony was, I can't remember, it was the higher level auditor position that they were requesting here. And if I don't, soon, Senator Bruce, you'll probably get a text from former Senator Ash. So
No, that's my memory too. Ironically, they could only find senior people to hire. So they needed to up the classification.
But that isn't much on a $4 million, you know,
no, it's quite modest.
pretty small.
So now we're into the state treasurer, and the treasurer asked for some positions. So do you want to run this through, Stephanie?
So the new positions being added are the financial manager and in VPIC. They're related to the, because they're doing it in the treasurer's office and classified.
She wanted more positions.
She did want more positions created than what was actually created. But I think the funding,
And one of them would be for pensions, so that comes under pension administration. All I can tell you is the treasurer is supposed to send us an email or a memo outlining the position request. She does not feel what the House did in their budget addressed their workforce need, and that they're working 80 hours a week now, and without more resources, they would be up to 100 hours a week.
So I'm not opposed to her getting more, but if we're holding positions, we should hold all positions.
So I'm going to suggest some of this may be related also to the fact that we created a different pension advisory investment committee. And so it did, and so there has been some positions movement out of the treasurer's office. We will hold it because I've asked the treasurer to please submit a memo to us that outlines her position request and the rationale for it.
so the House did create the retirement program technician and the financial, the conversion of the limited service financial manager. What they didn't do is create a new principal assistant position in the treasurers. They did create a principal assistant position in the VPIC entity.
Okay. So they took the existing principal assistant, gave it to VPIC, and the treasurer is now, and a principal assistant's usually a deputy position. So we'll wait until we get the memo from the treasurer's office. Unclaimed property. Seems to be very straightforward. Retirement system. Oh, the other thing Beth was saying, that there have a lot more retirees and retirements, so the workload associated with the administration of the pension benefits has increased as a result of sort of the volume that they've experienced. That was another comment that she had made. Retirement system, that went down quite a bit.
That's because of the VPIC move.
So that reflects the move.
You'll see
And that was something that we did in legislation to create that separate investment commission.
You also see that on the municipal side, and you probably will see it when we get to the teacher side.
but then you're gonna see in B 134.1, the commission and the money that's moved over there to support that. But that was in legislation that we passed, I believe, last year.
It was part of where the bill that set up the pension task force is where you split out.
Yeah, it was last year, yeah. So that's what you're seeing here is the movement of those funds into the commission. So that's reflected the bill that we passed.
Yep.
Labor Relations Board, pretty straightforward, 13,000. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it unless someone's got a very compelling issue. OSHA Review Board, 4,000, right? 4,000. I'm not gonna wait for Bobby to calculate the percentage, but I'm gonna suggest we close it out. Ethics Commission.
And that's the one where you do see the one-time $37,000, but that'll fold into their base in 24 through the HR formula that funds the Ethics Commission.
Thought they added an employee.
They did, that's what she's saying, a half a position.
The funding is in the one-time section in 23, but the expectation is that because the formula is already set for the internal service fund that funds these is already set for 23. And so when the Ethics Commission comes in with their 24 budget, that one-time funding will now be folded into the internal service fund and it'll get reflected here in this section. You get the budget next year.
So it's one time because of the transition, and next year, whoever's here working on budgets will see it here.
Good luck.
Yeah. For rebate, that's just adjusted for actual experience, I'm assuming.
It is,
Went down.
yeah.
Adam, why is that?
People.
Which one? Sorry.
137 went down
to
to
rebate.
went down 2 million.
So this is what we called years ago the super circuit breaker view.
Yeah, maybe.
Right. I'll look into it for you.
Side on the,
Yeah, it's 40. These are households
Yeah.
with incomes under 47,000.
so you probably have a shrinking universe of that.
It's just, this is mathematical. I can find out from tax why that happened, but there's nothing nefarious going on here.
No, particularly when it's going down.
Right.
We're also thinking that maybe as wages have gone up and so forth, we might be seeing someone, I don't know, somewhat.
Less homeowners in that category.
Yeah, or they've sold their house for a huge profit and gone into senior housing or something. All right, renter rebate, that's pretty constant. So we've gone through total for general government and we'll move on to protection to persons and property. And the first one is 201, court diversion.
Well, the first.
Wait, we jumped
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped right over.
over a bunch of current use payments and pilot. The House added 825,000 to the pilot.
Right, why is this printout missing those?
I don't know, but what section are you on, Dick?
142,
B142.
B1, excuse me.
Page 14 of 85.
Yeah, it's actually the hard printout that we did for Jane and I doesn't have, it's missing some of the sections of general government.
That's strange.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the PDF I sent you, Chris?
Yeah, and I'm looking at what's on the Senate Appropriations
So I
website.
just printed it from the PDF that we got from Teresa.
Yeah,
That's odd, it's just page 14 is missing.
Let me see if it's in the PDF from Teresa.
Oh, no, here it is, online, I just had it flipped over wrong,
Is it there?
yeah.
Well,
So we have rental rebate and then we go to municipal current use, which does have it, and payments in lieu of taxes, which does have an increase.
I'm not seeing it here.
So if do you have page 13 and 14? You did have 13.
I have 15,
Look at, if you
16.
but go backward from 15 to 30. Do you have 13?
Yes.
Flip over 13.
Okay.
1450, okay.
Oh, sorry, I was moving right along.
That's okay. I wanted to discuss the 825,000 to understand if there's an increase in the fund. I thought legislation required us to lower the administrative fee to the towns that are collecting the 30%. And if that's where that's coming from, because more towns are now collecting local option taxes, is that where that surplus is coming from?
So that is the source of the special fund is the local option tax. And it is the portion of the local option tax that doesn't go back to the town. So 70% goes back to the towns.
I thought that was legislation, or at least intent to legislation back when we wrote that. And we were always figuring you could lower that 30% once more towns got involved as administration. So what they're doing is giving that back in payment of lieu of taxes. And so, for example, Manchester collects quite a bit of local, theirs way up. And instead of them getting more money to the town, we're giving it to places that have state buildings, which is a policy choice. But I thought the legislation, the intent when we first wrote that legislation and developed the 70-30 split, the idea was eventually we'd be able to lower the administrative costs from 30% to 25% or whatever the administrative cost really was. So that's, I think, in my opinion, is misuse of that extra collection.
So I know we've had language in every year about the source of funds. And I'm just, so payments in lieu of taxes under this section shall be paid from the pilot special fund under 32 BSA 37 and 9. It's not a notwithstanding, but it's a stated every year where we do pilot that it's an allowed use under the fund in 32 3709. And so I don't know if that would mean that it wouldn't happen until pilot is at 100% funded.
Guess we'll have to check the language.
We'll check the language.
Because you're raising whether we're, this is reflective of the statutory language. So we'll hold that.
Thank you. It may not be a huge deal, but at least the League of Towns should be consulted on their thoughts on that 825,000.
And bringing the 825, that $10.5 million total for 23, that gets to about a 90% funding ratio of the pilot program. But pilot is just on buildings and it's uninsured value.
So maybe I'm mistaken, and the intent was that once pilot's fully funded, we would stop charging 30% and go to some lesser percent.
Or, you would continue to fund pilot, but then if that takes less than 30%, then it would just go back. And that's also.
So I'd like to have it looked at, because it does raise the issue of the towns that have chosen not to use the 1%, or can't use it.
Well, we'll hold it and check the language. Adam's listening, so maybe he can have somebody follow up on that. That's
well, maybe a VLCT could also take a look at it.
Well,
and I know that actually.
I'm worried about looking at the statute.
When the House was looking at this, it's an area that Steve Klein would regularly check, and I know Sarah went into this in terms of understanding what we don't increase pilot unless the trend rate is there to increase pilot. You wouldn't increase pilot just because of a one-time base availability. That is usually a choice to send that one-time base if it's building up back to one-time balance if it's building up back to the towns, as opposed to adding funds here in the base for pilot. There's always that analysis going on in terms of.
Well, we'll review the statute and see what was provided for, then we can hold that until we get that clarified. Montpelier, I'm gonna move right over that, save your breath.
Oh, darn.
I know. Correctional facilities, that's up a little bit.
No, it's flat,
What?
40, it remains at $40,000.
Yeah. Wait, I'm moving backwards. I'm on 14, I moved back to 13.
So you want to move on to 15?
I'd like to move on to 15. Okay, so now correctional facilities, that's not changed, and that's the end of
General government.
general government. So now we're into the 200 section, and we're in the Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General was very happy with his budget. House changed, and the only request came from Willa Farrell.
Yes.
Right.
It's 201, and she submitted her request, and we will have to put them on our list in terms of her memo and what she was asking for.
Right.
And I asked her if she would send us an email, and she did.
I know there was $53,400 request to provide the COLA increase. I believe there was another piece in her memo. Because I think the total was $200,000.
Something, but we'll get the memo and make sure that we're looking at that. So we're gonna hold, well, court diversion the way it is, but then we would adjust it depending on other decisions, because if we put funding in different places, we'll have to go in and adjust at that time. So, so we'll hold for now, and then adjust depending on what we're able to do with the funding request. The same is true, the Defender General, the House gave one-time money there, made no changes from the governor's recommend. I believe the Defender General did have a request for $995,000.
I think it was a little higher than that in terms of individual items that you.
I thought the net was $995.
So can I ask that
That
900,
would have to be on the request list. Yes, Rich?
that 995, he requested it in one time?
No, he,
To, cover
wanted base
backlog?
money. He wanted it in base, but the House gave him, I think, 1.3.
And it was really because recognizing the higher workload associated with the backlog, and so that's why they did it in the form of one time.
Well, my question is, can he hire contract lawyers to come in and help them catch up? And can he use the money?
Well, he didn't say otherwise. Otherwise, the choice is hold it out for base funding, of which we've got 40
We
million.
don't, I understand that, of which we don't have, but you know, this is always the problem when you have these situations, you know, whether it's the Human Rights Commission, whether it's ethic, we do all these things and say one-time money, and a lot of times they can't find the staff to do that. So I'm just asking if the one-time money is realistic.
Well, he said current public defense contract obligations are 309,000 of that 995. Reduced vacancy saving, more attainable level is gonna roughly 200,000. So there's 500,000 of the 995 that I would assume is base. Some of the other may or may not be.
Right.
In any case, we're talking about increases over and above what the governor proposed, the House proposed. So we're gonna have to come back, and we're either looking at base increases or one-time money, and it's gonna come to that list. So right now,
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I just was answering Rich's question.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that whether he needs it or not. I'm just questioning if one-time money can fill the bill.
Well, it'd have to look back at it next year, but what I've just said was about 500,000 of the 995 looks like base.
Right.
And his regular increase here, the 13.5, I mean, is that just for pay increases to who he does hire or?
Yes, yes. Well, he's got contract attorneys and, let's see, would they be in assigned counsel? Is that where they would be?
I think they're in both. I mean, I think the assigned counsel is a specific contract program, and then he also has contract employees in public defense.
You know,
And they would be under personal services.
the only, yeah, so you can look at what we have for, public defense, there. And, you can look at what we have in state's attorneys. And so, those are on the list. They're not in the House or the, so we'll have to come back and adjust depending on what we make for decisions in these two sections. I think all of that was public defense, was it, Dick? Or
Yep.
was it the sign?
Well, contract and assigned.
Okay. All right, well, that'll be, as is unless we, make a different decision around how we fund it. Judiciary, that would be impacted depending on what we do for, court
Security.
Yeah. So we'll close this out and then as we make decisions there as well.
Yeah.
Additions to the base. State's attorneys. That's pretty
I think
straightforward.
they were okay.
Yeah, I think the only changes we're gonna have is on the sheriff's side or state paid
Yeah.
deputies, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's more language than anything. SIUs, that's pretty straightforward. Sheriffs,
So that's where some of the change will come.
yeah, what we would have here though would be the cost, because these are state paid, they're not, Stephanie, would this include the salary and benefit increase then for personal services? Or how many do we have, Dick, 24?
26 authorized positions, I believe, and like 23 are filled.
It would not, we would have the impact of the retirement bill that we passed might show up in budget adjustment here. If they bargain and have a higher cost on the state paid, but that's not reflected here.
You mean,
If the bill that was passed the Senate became law, then there could be pressure on this,
but we won't know that until after July 1st.
just like any other pay act.
Because we didn't make that bill effective until July 1st. We're talking about the bargaining.
Yeah. And so it could have an FY23 impact. We were clearly eliminating any FY22 impact.
All right, so we'll close that out, knowing that, depending on if they join a bargaining unit, or with the creation of a bargaining unit, that could, they could negotiate for maybe higher salaries, and that would be a BAA pressure.
Yeah.
Public safety. Administration, there's not anything there, Dick, I don't think.
Not on administration.
Oh, okay. State police.
That's where that language that we've been working on, that Stephanie did a great job of working on.
Okay.
The language for the dispatch, the 11 million.
So we're going to have to go in because, we thought we were gonna have to release about 8 million or
Well,
something.
that was the ask from public safety. I actually think you might release, depending on how you look at the timing. That was basically the 8 mil was all the majority of it was the facility grant costs out. And if Rutland is gonna take longer, that's the piece that can probably come off the 8 million.
The House did not agree with the governor's proposal, to,
Swap JTOC, yes.
yeah, to stop the JTOC transfer. And our transportation committee didn't take a position. Senator Mazza's main concern is the JTOC transfer provided security around the cars, which was something we've been concerned about. I remember Senator Sears talking about,
Seeing through the floorboards.
no, well, Colonel Baker couldn't even fill his tank up completely because the gas tank leaked. So we closed that loophole and said, you have to,
At least on the cruisers, I don't know about the commissioner's car.
well, that was back when I
Well,
think,
actually, it was a cruiser. It was an unmarked because that was the colonel, not the commissioner.
so he was not the commissioner. So I guess, we need to hold this because we're working on it. Still, a little bit, Stephanie?
So the money pieces would still be that $11 million, the draft is still around the $11 million, and the $3 million is simply taken out to make that $11 million fund as opposed to having.
So this is okay then? the way it
This
is?
section is okay, it's returning to the language that would be the.
All right, so this
Yeah.
money here is okay. In terms, if we did not have the JTOC transfer, we'd be finding an even bigger hole here
In the base budget.
in the
Right.
base budget. And the 3 million is fine because it's gonna be needed for this other alternative proposal that Senator Sears has been working on.
Well, actually, Stephanie's been doing the bulk of the work.
Well,
Credit where credit's due.
all right, so Stephanie says the 3 million should go and we'll use it some other way.
So, well, it's kept in the dispatch arena. And, obviously, if it's in a one-time section now, it does help the base, but you have a balance between the base and the one-time. And as long as you're keeping that balance in mind as you go through 23, you're not making 24 too much more painful.
All right, so B210, public safety, criminal justice, seems to.
Yep.
That's nothing there. Emergency management, something must have happened here. We go from 17 to 40.
It's all in the federal fund line.
Yeah, it sure is. 39.5 of it.
So
I think,
we can go into their
What
budget.
are all those grants?
They're probably actually budgeting some run out of FEMA money. I don't know if Adam is still on there, because that's the big main federal money that would flow
the
through.
recollection is it is the FEMA.
That is correct. That is correct.
That would including like the FEMA 100% food, the FEMA funding of emergency shelter, those kinds of things.
We did have hundreds of millions.
Right.
Of dollars that ran
Everyone
through
eats and the like.
Okay. So all of that really is all driven by the federal dollars that have come to the state.
Mhm.
A good part of it, or virtually all of it, yes.
And then public, fire safety.
Yep, that's okay.
Yeah, looks good.
Forensic lab. That's nothing there, went down a little bit. So close that. Military administration.
Yep. That's
Not much there, just
there.
mostly operating, grants went up and personal services, salary and benefits. Military, same thing there.
Can I just,
And here.
Where is the Center for Crime Victim Services?
We'll be getting to it.
It's in B 220, it's on the
okay.
next page, 21.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Building maintenance, this is still military and veterans affairs. I think nothing was changed much there. So now we're down to 220 Center for Crime Victim Services.
And they're in trouble. They're about 2.2 million short in base funding. 2.3 million of that is the victims assistance programs that we state's attorney's offices. It's about 550,000 is sub grants to the Violence Against Women's Act, federal VOCA funds that have been reduced. And about 300,000 is the domestic violence and sexual assault programs, the network programs. And then there was 48,000 in bridge funding to support the Vermont Legal Network services that they provide.
So the House did a reduction on grants of 3.2 million.
Right.
Over the governor's recommend.
And then they provided 2 million in one-time funds.
Yes. So they reduced the special fund line item by 3.2 because that's the special fund line item doesn't have $6 million of anticipated revenue in those variety of special funds.
So the governor was proposing money that didn't exist.
We have, that's the issue brief that Dan Anderson put together. And as you recall, between budget adjustment, the big bill and budget adjustment last year, we backfilled, or budget adjustment this year, we backfilled about $3 million of their money as well. And so that's the reason for the 3.2 down. That the House did provide the $2 million of one-time general fund money in the one-time section, but the programs and the special funds in crime victims have this structural
deficit here, and that's and that's one that we're gonna have to put on the list.
Well, I just point out, none of this is an expansion of what they're doing. It's to fund what they're already doing.
Yeah, no, we know that. We know that, and it raises the larger discussion about, is this really the appropriate source of money funding for this particular activity? But it's something that we're going to have to come back to.
Yeah.
The question is, do we attempt to deal with the shortfall with one time, which doesn't totally cover it, and ignore the structural deficit, or is there some way that we reflect it?
Well,
it does leave $1.22 million pressure on their grants that they would have to adjust to.
So the question is, should it be 3.2 one time, just limp along a little longer? Should we,
if you have room in the base in the general fund, depending on where revenues land,
or even a little bit more in base?
And then you hope opportunities that maybe you take a cost away from them, and on the victim's advocate lodge that directly in the state's attorney's office.
I thought
if you're gonna do it in a general fund way.
I thought Dick said they were short 2.3 million.
No, that's just in the category of state's attorneys, victims assistance. I mean, victim
services.
So they part of their
victims
cost.
advocates and your state's attorneys. That's the majority of the down, but it's mostly because their fines and tickets are down by about 40% from what they were in the past, because people aren't being stopped on the highways as much because there's fewer troopers, and during the pandemic I think a lot of folks didn't want to stop people.
Well, we have a couple of choices. We can do a combination. We can do what the House did, or we can do a combination of one time, and if we can do some base money that would go to the state's attorney's office that would be there on an ongoing basis.
And relieve some pressure on their, on their
Only-
base budgets.
The only place where I would be concerned is the roughly 500,000 that is a loss in federal funds in the Violence Against Women's Act. Now, maybe that'll come back up or whatever, but that's loss of federal funds. And I've always not trying to replace federal programs.
Does the 3.2 reflect the 500,000?
So
Yeah.
it
Yes.
was- well, actually, it does not. The 3.2 reflects the special fund position. You actually see the reduction in federal funds on the line there. The question is,
That's
Yeah.
6.6.
the 6 point was offsetting some of the federal fund loss. So that's the,
All right, well, we'll have, this is one of the areas that we'll have to come back to. I think this gets into our discussion around priorities. This is a longstanding program that addresses crime victim services, and it's a structural problem, and the extent to which we can address it, it's going to tie into how much money we have and how we prioritize. So I'm going to keep going to page 22. So we'll obviously hold that open, Center for Crime Victims. Criminal justice.
Yeah, we have a request for funding there from Bill Sorrell,
On the criminal justice.
Training Council, yeah.
All right, well, we're going to hold that as well, because that's an increase.
Get that email, Senator? It was addressed to you, Senator Kitchell.
No, I didn't. You mean just recently?
April 8th.
Well, that's fairly recent. My memory is not that feeble yet. I didn't get it. You want to forward it to me, Dick?
Yeah, if I can find it again.
How much was the money?
150,000, I think. It's a simulator.
Oh,
the House did not fund that. That was in the one-time section.
it wasn't the one.
Of the administration's proposal.
Okay.
That,
All right.
do-
So
do-
the House, it was a one-time, it was on the governor's one-time list. The House did not fund it. So.
Oh, wait, no, the House did fund the simulator. They didn't fund the new exam.
Didn't approve the 50,000 for retention of an expert with expertise.
So what's the simulator?
The simulator is funded in the House position. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but what is it?
It's an.
It used to train
simulator.
law enforcement personnel to better deal with high-stress situations, school shootings, for example.
Exactly. It's meant to do training, kind of 21st century to provide law enforcement with training for incidents they're likely to come across today.
So this is base funding right now.
That's correct.
And it sounds like there's been some one-time that they funded some,
They
but
funded
not
it.
the
Not the
exam.
new entrance exam. That's what the House did not fund.
And I don't know what Bill Sorrell was asking for. Was it to fund the exam, Dick?
It was a
Funding for-
consultant.
Yeah, the 150, both. The 50,000 to retain an expert to assist in the creation of new entrance tests for admission to the academy,
All
which
right,
the admission did not support, and $100,000 for the simulator.
okay, which the House did, the governor supported and the House supported. All right, okay, well, we'll put the exam is on our one time.
Okay,
Okay.
well, I think, did the House put the simulator and the governor
Yes,
on the one
yes,
time,
yes,
right?
They did.
Okay. All right, I will forward that to Stephanie and to you.
I think she's got it. I think she's got it,
You can forward the email. I don't think I saw the email from.
but we have it on our list.
But we do have the exam request on our list.
But we haven't gotten to one time.
No.
So we haven't even agreed with the simulator yet.
You walk through those all on Friday, keeping them basically all open.
So Criminal Justice Council, at least for base, is okay. Ag 222, foods and markets,
So ag is a place where new positions are being created as
Yes.
well.
and a huge increase. So we're gonna hold those for our earlier discussion, because those are enhancements. And move on to food safety and consumer protection.
That doesn't,
Okay, so we're,
Yeah.
and ag development, that's, let's see, that went up
200,
because of federal funds. That's where it all is, on the federal fund line, 4.1 to 7.5. So ag development is okay.
yeah,
Foods and markets, special funds, where are those, that's where the increase is. What are the special funds?
those are where they get grants from water quality and that stuff, isn't
Are
it?
those
And-
just the transfers?
and from the,
And they actually, there's actually a transfer into their own clean water special fund, and so
That's what
that
that
would
is.
show up on the special fund line here.
All right. Then we have clean water here on 2225.
That would be great. Those are the special funds for clean water. Back in agricultural resource management, environmental stewardship,
What is the special fund there?
we can find on their budget documents.
What time is it? It feels like about midnight, but I don't
Quarter
think
to
it
three,
is.
so we have about 45 minutes left on our time this afternoon. But we'll circle back with the special funds that exist and add it.
It's fine.
Chrissy, if you look at last November's joint fiscal, the special fund list, we can put that out. And that's probably the easiest place to see the ag special fund array.
Special funds, obviously in clean water, that's most of it, 7.2.
right,
Okay.
Madam Chair, they have a half a dozen special funds, which include their fertilizer fund and the like, that are pretty big takers, permitting funds for various functions that they do. So I can get you a list too, Stephanie.
Oh, it's fine. I don't think we need to get into the weeds on that. It's just came up. I'm gonna move on to DFR administration. Not a whole, the House changed it. Per the administration, well, I guess,
I think that it was delay in this project, and so I think they got a notification that they should pull that down.
so we're
So
gonna
it's already out.
agree with the House on that. Banking, not much there. We like banks. We like insurance.
Especially like captives.
We love captives, right?
You like
but
security.
they make us money.
Somebody said, NC, and whatever it is, NCAA or,
The NCOIL or the captive specific.
yeah, no, they're now, they are doing captive business in Vermont. What is it?
Oh,
Is that
yeah.
the big?
AA, right, the basketball?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've moved to captive insurance and the plan is domiciled here in Vermont. Oh. Captives, we're closing out securities, we're moving right along on executive mode here. 26 is Secretary of State. Oh, we had to give him some money for elections.
And they have capital money that they're they're expecting an increase in.
Yeah, the federal money has gone up a lot, $1.4 million to 4.6, so. Close that out. All pretty much voting related. Public service, regulation and energy. Much here.
So this one I may have you hold open simply because of the understanding how the broadband board budget functions.
Yeah. We're gonna keep that open. And the reason is how universal service funds are accommodated within the budget.
But also the way, the spending authority for in the statute for the broadband board there's nothing showing up in this line item on the budgeting for the broadband board, but there's this underlying authority.
Yeah, the up to.
The up to, that you might want to take a look at in terms of actually having an annual budget for the board in some sort of detail.
Yeah. Language. Okay. Public Utility Commission, that's unchanged. 911 board.
That's down.
Well,
They must-
because of what the House did.
So the administration had proposed doing this entirely in general fund. The House did not accept that and moved it back into the universal service fund, but at the 3.2 level and backfilled with 1.3 of general fund in the one-time section. So this is also a place where a structural deficit
Yeah.
remains.
This is where we might address.
We might try, we'll be looking at the array of the funding sources and seeing if there's some reduction.
Of how we can address this. So we're gonna hold that open. Human Rights Commission, I know they wanted another position, the House Governor did not include it, the House did not, that's on our list.
Yep, the 150.
So we're close that out for now. Liquor and lottery, very little change there. Lottery operations, the Commissioner's Office now, the operations, the House made a change of 75,000.
You can check out of the advertising budget. When they came in, they had said that they were increasing $100,000 over last year's advertising budget, and the House brought that down to just a $25,000 increase
Is that,
in advertising
Stephanie?
budget. Yep.
was that just a general discomfort with advertising for Vice products?
Probably they just needed money.
No, this doesn't really flow through.
Oh,
We don't
No.
book the direct out.
no, that's right, it's lottery would be ed fund anyway.
Yeah.
Or is it because it was taking off during the pandemic without the advertising?
I think that, they
We don't know, we'll
they
find
just-
out.
The House has made that choice not to increase that particular.
We didn't hear anything, we haven't had any emails saying, that wasn't in the Dear Jane letter, so.
No, but it was a, the lottery did come in and very clearly state that they had increased their advertising line.
Well,
When
They hope to.
yeah, they hope to, in their proposal. And the House did not agree with that.
Committee have an opinion?
Well, I had heard that the sales of liquor were way up during the pandemic.
But this is lottery.
This is the lottery operations.
Oh, I see. I'm thinking that it has to do with, they've opposed advertising, of course, for cannabis. I just think they don't think it's the state's role to be advertising in those areas. But that doesn't mean that has to control what we do, but
Well, we can always just restore it. Obviously, it's the ultimate beneficiary is the ed fund and property taxes, so.
yeah.
You want to just go with the governor's recommend?
I would.
Okay. So
I'm
we'll-
with Senator Baruth.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We'll go with the governor. Would you make a note of that, Adam, please?
All capital,
Chair, you may remember this language being in previous budgets that we've submitted too. So I just want to be clear that this isn't the first time,
No.
but thank you.
Well, we're consistent, maybe. All right, so now we're down to liquor control and administration. Very modest change, not just really personal services and operating. Liquor enforcement and licensing, same thing. Warehouse, distribution.
Looks good.
It's
even went
actually down a little bit.
Even went down, you're right. So now we're on to page 29 of 85. Cannabis control. Well, this is something that we have already talked about, and we committed to fund these 3 positions. And the governor's IT.
I need to go for a minute. Somebody's at my house.
Oh,
I'll be
well,
like,
you're at your house too.
right, no one is expected.
Oh,
Hope it's not a raccoon.
This gets into some language change, because remember we talked about the fees ended up not covering the administrative costs because of the additional requirements that got put in the bill in order to get it passed in the House. And so we would like to address that reality and make sure that that the default isn't the general fund. In other words, those costs of administration are recognized upfront. And so we have language to do that in light of how the fee were set and could not be raised at the level that would be necessary to make our fees commensurate with other states. And a lot of it was a result of the legislative action on the bill that occurred after it left the Senate. So we will be proposing language that recognizes the need to put more money in administration because the fees don't underwrite it.
And having the flow of money change
Yeah.
so that you don't open up a structural deficit here.
Yeah, we don't want a structural deficit.
It does, right now, the
Yeah,
structural
no.
deficit is about $3.2 million with the pieces that are coming out of the special fund. With the construct where we could move the phase 1 back into 22 funding because we have that available, and then restructure the flow of money so that the 30% of prevention and after school happens on the, the post operations of the board. You bring the deficit position down to basically 1.5, and then if you do that, that's the pressure. You're absorbing that pressure in the general fund. And so that's part of the construct that would be utilizing some of the capacity in the general fund.
So that
Avoiding
is.
any deficit, yawning
Do
deficit.
we have the language?
We do have the language from Michelle.
Okay, all right. So that is language that I would propose that we add, and it recognizes what has happened relative to the decisions on fees and what is the cost, and the fact that, we
But it doesn't.
Agreed.
This section would not change. You'd still have the same special fund appropriation here.
but the language,
But the language would change for 23, we'd probably put it 22, actually,
okay. So Senator Sears,
I agree.
I mean, I don't think we ever
I
thought that.
put my thumb up. I was trying to be like a house member and put my thumb up, but I guess
Yeah.
I did.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure that we're being watched, maybe by some of our colleagues in the House as well. So we're gonna have language there. This is just more informational, and then this would, we had agreed that we needed to fund the IT system and that we would add the 3 positions and create them in the budget. So this is closed out. Now we're into human services.
So in 300, you see the 120 the House added for the position in the healthcare ombudsman. And this is also where VLA, Vermont Legal Aid, would like the $400 and something thousand that the House added one time to be moved into the base.
Well, that's on our one-time
List.
base discussion.
Yep.
Have we bored you to death, Chris?
3:00 call. This is the most fun room in the building. Right over here.
Everybody says
Even on a
that.
quiet Monday afternoon.
I know.
In 301, the global commitment.
So let me ask, do we want to hold this position and put it on to come back to?
Yes.
Okay. We have two, obviously the base for legal aid services, Eric Appleson caught me the other day, and the funding for that has been rather dismal historically, and so the one time is nice, but it really doesn't address the cost of the service. On the other hand, we'll consider both the base and the ongoing, consistent with our position. And global commitment.
There are two items that you have to add here. Pretty much the 1.8 for the direct care workers. If you didn't add funding here, then AHS would have to find it in some fashion. On the general fund line. And then there's also the little item that we forgot to add in the House, and that's the rollout of that factor and the Medicare factor for the rates, the primary care rates. We've done the piece in the budget adjustment. That's about a $260,000 general fund item.
That needs to be reflected here as well.
Yes, and that was just an oversight on our part.
So this will hold. I don't know whether we're going to be able to do anything more. The DAs, of course, would like that 10%. And if we, each 1% is about $2 million. 2.2 or 2.2. So that if we are able to do anything more here, and also the primary care correction, we will be revisiting this section. So this is, we'll hold it. Disabilities Council, it's pretty straightforward.
Same with the Human Service Board.
Yeah. Who is the chair of Human Service? Charlie Jingo isn't anymore, is he, Dick?
So
You think he still is?
I don't know. I'll look it up.
Oh. I'm going to close them out. They're really very small. AHS Administrative Fund, and this is just to allow them to
The major internal service fund line items, I think, is the main purpose of this.
and it's up a bit.
So all the departments pay in through a departmental transfer, the big fee for space.
And then the agency pays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consolidates the overhead in lots of places.
Vermont Health Access Administration.
And of course, there are many positions that are existing that are converted to.
Yes,
Positions.
there's no additional cost. They're just
Yeah.
limited service.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, Rich.
No, that was Phil, I think.
Oh,
Not me. Must have been the cat.
Yeah, no, they are not much, so.
no, because the conversion of limited service to permanent, it's no cost. It's more of a the status within the personnel system. We pay all the same benefits, retirement, et cetera. So global commitment, obviously, Department of Health Access Medicaid program. And that's home health rate is there. DAs to 7%.
Are we gonna work on those rates for the DAs eventually?
Well, yes, that's going to be part of our discussion about ongoing base obligation and the what comes first. So the
Yeah,
House raised it from 3% to 7%, and that was my earlier comment. Is each percentage point we raise it costs 2.2 million general fund. So when we come to look at what we have for money to for base additions, we've got the question, can we raise that 7%? We already know that we've got a contract obligation for personal care workers, and that's about 2 million. So we've got a number of considerations relative to what is a relatively small amount of base.
Yeah, that's for sure. But anyways,
Yeah, so that's gonna be part of our discussion.
That 2 million just for the to the designated agencies,
Now,
or
the
is it
2.2 would
include
include
choice?
both long-term care, the choices for care, a home, home and community-based services.
Doesn't for PNMI programs, for Turning Point clubs, that sort of
No.
thing, not
Well,
included.
Turning Point, it would be recovery centers, and there's nothing,
And there's no increase for them.
so the governor's proposed budget included no increase for the recovery centers, which would be Turning Points. No increases for your youth service bureaus, for example. And so that's going to be on our list.
So could we, is there some way that joint fiscal could provide us a list of
We will. We will.
who got left out?
We will provide that list. I guess we
Because-
could break it up between those who got something and those that got nothing. But
Well, because, for me, the list of those that got nothing, there's some pretty important functions that got nothing. And I would be interested in addressing them before we went beyond the 7%.
So you're talking in terms of universe of community providers, like the adult A's, the AAA's, the.
they're already part of that 7%.
Yes,
The AAA's.
yeah, so are the adult days.
Yeah.
But for example, the list that was just given, because in my area, it is recovery centers. There are a number of areas like that that didn't get any increase. And the recovery centers haven't had anything for 5 years.
Well, they're on our list, and that we're getting into the priority setting here.
But it would just be helpful to me to see who is offering the 7% in the designated agency list.
We can do
Helpful
that.
it would be helpful to see the list that who got 7, who got 3, and who got 0.
Yes, it would.
I don't exactly. Well, maybe Sarah can help us on that front. Who's on that, who got nothing, because I'm sure that there will be some that say we wouldn't be thinking of that would want to get on it. But I think we can go back and look where we do appropriations, and we can categorize them in that way.
That would be helpful.
Would be.
The other issue has to do with the rate set in PNMI, and those get into the group homes, and there was the same request from them to look at the base year, which is 2019, and get their base year updated. And maybe we can put some language in or something, and look at what it would take to do that. We could think about it in the budget adjust. I don't know. We'll have to, but we've got that other group of providers there, Dick.
Yep.
That reimbursement is through the rate setting structure.
Right.
All right. So where's on our list? I'm well staffed. I'm here all by myself, and I have Chrissy on my left. I have Sarah Clark on my right, and I have Stephanie
At the other end of the
down at
table.
the other end of the table.
You might be sick of me by now for a week.
So when
I feel
somebody calls-
like I've never been as well staffed as I am this afternoon. So
Well,
we're
when we call Senator Kitchell's office, who answers the phone though?
Chrissy,
yeah, that's, you can get a recording, leave a message. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Medicaid state only,
What number are we on, please?
309,
Thank you.
309. And that is
The clawback.
the clawback and dish I think dish is there.
The dish is a non-waiver, I believe, because that's a next.
Oh, yeah,
the
maybe.
State only is the clawback, the
Some of the
supplement for
pharmacy, is it
It's
some-
pharmacy is the global commitment, so it's a state-only program, but we match it through the investment, and then the other thing is the help on the cost for not the premium assistance, but the cost sharing.
Okay.
That's state only. And I think there's one other thing that's state only, but the big number in there is the clawback.
Clawback.
That's on the general fund line now.
Okay, non-waiver and matched, and that would be,
Dish is the big part of that. And
S-chip, it would be.
Yeah, that's just fall in there.
So, I'm gonna just close those out. Unfortunately, we have to pay clawback.
They probably just withhold it anyway.
And S-chip, S-chip is, the higher income Dr. Dinosaur kids. Health, now we're in the health department.
Yep.
Yep.
And obviously, look at the federal funds. Tremendous amount, 7.7 up to 19.3, lots of federal money. Although they are always a very dependent on federal grants. So the House made no changes. Rich, you all set with that?
Nothing there. The next piece in 312, that apparently Maria has done a little bit of a sheet there, and I'm trying to connect with Sarah Clark. We're working together to figure out the AIDS.
Sarah's right here.
Yep. But we're going to go through all of that in.
Syringe exchange is a House bill, isn't it?
Yes, there's a House bill with a number of different pieces. What I will do is I'll have a sheet that has the governor's recommend, that House bill with all of the House spending in the budget and separate, and then a recommendation.
Yeah, but we haven't passed the House bill yet.
No, we haven't seen that, but I'll produce, we're working to produce something that will have 3 lines that show everything.
All right, but let me ask, that 295, does that fall into an enrichment and expansion? In other words, added for client support? Are we adding more staff?
That's exactly what we're gonna produce on a sheet to show you.
So these are grants to the 3 service
So
organizations.
my question is, are
Yes,
these?
what was the base grant, and then what are we adding on top of it?
Right, and so I'm saying if we're consistent, then these are enhancements that should go onto the list for consideration.
Yes.
Right.
The 295, the ask from the AIDS service organization was a little bit higher than this. They wanted to add a new organization, a twin state organization. The House did not fund that, but they did fund this in this added funding level of 295.
Okay, so these are, you're gonna give us more information as we consider this request.
Yes, absolutely, and it will all be on a sheet.
All right, so this is really to provide additional. All right, so we'll add, it's on our sheet, right? It's on our tracking sheet?
It's on our tracking sheet. It is a, it's a decision point. The House made the decision to add funding here.
All right.
But I'm trying to get at, isn't the 560,000, that's a House bill that we have not voted on yet?
That's
Am I
correct.
correct.
So the House,
So the House
added the
bill-
funding here in the
That
base.
House
Well, they-
bill would have to pass for us to approve it, right?
So no, the House has decided to increase the base of funding that goes out to the AIDS service organization for prevention and for syringe exchange. And you see that in the language that they've provided and here in the base.
So, all right. And the other thing I think is the House did not fund a lot of the other prevention that was requested. So this is a combination of both prevention and needle exchange.
Through the HIV, the AIDS HIV organizations, the money goes through those.
All right,
And then down in 313, the ADAP section, there is a House Bill H 728 that has some money flowing in it for rate increases. Is that the opioid rate increase?
It's not rate increases. There are three different components behind that $880,000.
So when you see,
The mobile unit is in there. There's,
This is all in the public health. All right, so we're not dealing with any add-ons at this point, so we'll keep going and then you can give us more information when we get back to that.
so it's, it's taking the $8 million, which included the Jenna's house piece that was in the governor's proposal, and
well, the governor's proposal had 8.2, and the House proposal with that and with the other bill adds up to about 7.3. So there's two there. Those are the two competing, but the House is in that separate bill plus the budget.
We'll just take we're gonna take a look at it. The other question then was, which I don't understand, is this is 855 over the governor's, and you said, well, it was, this money was part of the governor's larger prevention plan, but then why wasn't it reflected in the governor's recommend here, or is it some other place? That's my question, Sarah, but we'll come back to it.
Yeah. So it is reflected in the governor's line item, the $8 million in the general fund and in the grant line items in the governor's column for 313.
Oh, down in 313.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
where it is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we have the new program. That's so the all of this is really adding on.
Yes.
Okay. I guess we hold it, and Rich will have to.
Yep. What I plan on working with Sarah, and we've started that work, is to get a sheet and get them do side by side, so you can see where the governor put his money. You can see where the House put its money, given that it's in two different bills, and I'll have some recommendations about this. You know, as I've said to you, my top priority is to make sure that the recovery centers get. They've asked for 45,000 per recovery center, which is 540,000, and because there are the front line where everybody enters, and they haven't had any.
It's on our list. Got it, Rich.
But they'll be first. There are some other pieces to this that that, you know, some of the people leaving treatment, there's a proposal in the governor's budget to put 270 towards helping people get jobs and build a life at the end. And the House did something different. So there are a number of places we'll have to make decisions.
Yeah, all right. Mental health, that's, once again, this is into the DAs and the SFAs and choices for care. So this is all open at this point.
And included in the governor's red column is his proposal on the mobile response, the urgent care mobile response. There's $6 million in the grant line that is embedded in his column that is was included by the House budget.
What, I'm sorry.
In mental health, the mobile crisis, the mobile response for urgent care in mental health. The governor's proposal includes roughly $6 million for that, and the House included that. They didn't change that proposal at all.
That's with the 85% match or
Yes,
something.
yeah, with the language that looks for sustainability, and we have added, you had asked for reporting language back around Rutland and specifically around the status of how those unfold.
Yeah, which in fact is a significant additional funding into that system.
Yeah.
Because it really is providing treatment and response services to people It's just going to where they are rather than to the office. But it's open anyway at this point.
So are we gonna hold
Yes.
14?
Yes, 314. 35.
So 316 is ECF's admin line item.
What happened to 315?
315, I believe, was the Old State Hospital line.
Oh, okay.
And now it's all folded into one line in mental health.
I was wondering if I was missing a heading here.
No,
We had testimony from the commissioner saying that they felt that it made sense to eliminate the medical review, that in fact, all the time, they accept the assessment of the treating physician as to this is the incapacity eligibility. And I think that makes sense. I think it's very hard to overcome the assessment made by the treating physician because even in disability cases, deference is given to the physician who is seeing the patient and making a determination. I'm surprised that this is costing this much. Years ago, and when there was a much larger caseload, a physician came in under contract one morning a week to review the cases and make a decision. So this must be almost one full-time position, but there would be administrative. But those are all in the base. It's kind of hard to extract them. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but I'm willing to go with the administration and save the $130,000.
and it does lead to the conversation about that other bill with the reach up.
I'm good with that.
Yeah,
There is another reach-up bill somewhere around that has
A medical review as well, with a new medical review for $500,000.
H464.
so the House wants to not only
They were adding the money back to fund the.
and then adding another $500,000. How many NCAP cases do we have?
I do not know.
I'd like to find out. Incapacity, these are two-parent family, reach-up families, where one of the parents is, the eligibility is based on a parent's incapacity and unable to work. It's not as stringent a test as disability that you would have for SSI or Social Security. So the House not only wants to spend $130,000, but an additional $500,000 to do something.
The 500,000 is for IT system improvements at DCF, be a one-time appropriation in the bill.
Well, that's a different issue than NCAP.
It's part of the, yes, agreed.
Okay. Well, we'll take a look at those two bills. I think in terms of spending money, frankly, I'd rather spend the money to buy back more of the SSI counting of income, which is something that we've had as a priority.
I think we brought it back up to the level it did previously. I think we have.
Have we done that?
In reach up, yes, I'll double check, but I believe we did last year or the year before. We
All
brought
right, I
it all
just
the way
want to
back
make
up
sure. All right.
to the,
Uh-huh.
that full disregard,
All right, let's should take a look at that.
Yeah.
Family services. The House has changed. This is child welfare, child protection.
This is just a net neutral move, it's just moving it from family services down into the child development.
Okay. So there's nothing there. Except obviously what we do for family services and what we do to support families. I'm back to our UVM study that indicated as a state, Vermont doesn't provide the same volume of preventive services to our child welfare related cases as other states and have a lower rate. So that kind of struck me in terms of as we make decisions. You know, we've got requests here from parent-child centers. I'm sure that maybe different parent-child centers do things differently, but the one in our area works very closely with DCF, with child protection cases. And so I've just taking that study that we asked UVM to do, reviewing actual cases and looking at the literature and giving us information, because everybody's got an answer out there, what we need to do to strengthen the system. And you know, we've got people that say we need more, we need more parent legal representation, or we need this, or we need that. But it seems like states that are doing better than we are have invested in those services that directly connect to families. So let's keep going on that. Child development would be, the only point I'm saying is there's investments that we might make somewhere else that have a beneficial impact on other, you know, the same population. Child development, this is just restructuring, I guess. And
Well, there's
the house did quite a bit here.
They took out the after school,
Okay.
and then they provided some increase between state and federal dollars. Almost $900,000
So the
total.
after school, is that the 6-9?
That's the 6-9.
that's a 6-9.
I would remind people that also with the cannabis legislation, all the sales tax goes into the ed fund, and that's devoted to after school programs. So this is another example of, you know, a revenue stream coming on board that is specifically dedicated to expand this area. So so I just see that as a nexus that if we're looking for money and where we have the potential for more revenues because of legislation that we passed that allocates funding for a particular purpose.
There's a lot going on here. There's, you know, the IT system that is a new IT system here. We're getting a jump on the new funding system for the whole new redo of the help for families for subsidies for this. There's a whole lot. The area where I think we might want to take a look at is the development of workforce, and particularly I don't think the House or the governor did anything about we started the program to move into the tech centers, and now that's moving ahead, and that might need a little help.
Well, that might be in the workforce bill. There's quite a bit CTE related there.
Yeah, well, I've been through that, and that hasn't been in there, but we're gonna have to take a look at that.
All right, well, it looks like the one thing that we're seeing here is an increase to reimbursement for children's integrated services, which 3 years ago used to be that CUPS program, Children's
Yep.
Upstream Services.
Yep.
With a new name. 37, so we've got, Rich, you had something you wanted to do there, or were you talking about the CTE connection? I mean, obviously, with the budget that we've got, we can put that on as the governors recommend.
Yep.
But I think that's a lot of money to start up or to expand something that where we'll be overlaying a dedicated funding stream when
Yep.
we're having to set, you know, so many other, where we've got so many other programmatic pressures.
Yep.
So should we just leave that for now and come back to it if anything? One is the transportation. We knew that wasn't gonna happen and it didn't.
Mhm.
You know, the after-school program, at this point say, you know, there's funding coming in very soon. Cannabis started up in April. And then children's integrated services reimbursement for that service. Keep that and just keep that closed for now and come back if need be.
With the cannabis prevention money, it might be necessary to provide bridge funding. I hate that word, but one time when the cannabis, I don't believe sales and income to any great extent are going to come in until the fall. Because right now it's just licenses, license fees and that sort of thing is coming in. So it might be wise to think about doing that kind of bridge funding till when they're going to be getting all that after school money, all those prevention dollars.
You know, the other thing though, which I think we need to be clear, and that is we have Monica Hutt. We had a prevention, our whole thinking was that we needed to start looking. We've created councils here, et cetera, and look at a more systematic way of how we're investing in prevention and looking at that as a much more organized system. Some of it's been in mental health, some has been in, you know, and some is Department of Health, and really take a hard look at what we're paying for. What are the metrics? We get all the emails, you know, in terms of what the return is, but in terms of our own experience in Vermont, how we would really gather that data. And so that to me is something that's really inherent with, you know, these investments of millions of dollars that are going to go out. As we're, I don't know about bridge funding. That would be one time, and we'd have to look at what we have.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, instead of
Yeah, I was just
looking
gonna
at
agree with,
base funding versus one time, I think one time's a little more, well, I don't know how much money there is versus requests. I haven't seen that list yet.
About
but
70 million exceed what we've got. Just to give you a rough estimate, might be higher considering the requests I got over the weekend.
Thought we were in flush times.
No, well, when you're lopping off 40 million, you know, 10 million here, 25 here, it goes really quickly.
Yeah,
So
I know that.
in terms of base funding, ongoing commitment, the requests exceed 40 million at this point.
I'm gonna use the governor's speech, his state of speech about the opportunity to do transitional things. And I'm not sure, transformative, thank you. Not sure a 3% increase for people that are struggling right now to provide services in our communities is gonna be transformative.
Might be transformative, but not in
the wrong direction.
positive way.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I think, you know, there's an impression out there that we've got a lot of money to spend like at no other time in history. And yet it's where we spend it has a lot to say about our character. And I think to continue to, well, a lot of good things we should be doing that we could be doing, but we ought to shore up what we have now. We have a mental health system in crisis in the state. It's affecting our corrections department. It's affecting our quality of life. It's affecting our children and families department. So I think we've enough said. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to think that, you know, this is the biggest budget I've ever seen, but yet where is I mean, in spending, what, 7 billion or whatever it is, and yet 8 billion, and where, you know, what comes back down to those struggling in the trenches, dealing with some of the most difficult people in the state.
that's gonna be our task ahead of us. There's no question about it, Dick. And the big thing is, all the federal money has kind of created this, this furor, sort of like a food frenzy, and we've got one time, but I will just caution people that once we start unwinding all these federal dollars, 10 billion into the Vermont economy has distorted revenues for a short time, but we're back to a 2% estimated base increase in maybe 24 months, 2 years out. So our challenge is to recognize that we cannot be building a budget that is going to put us over a cliff and is not sustainable with the world as we know it. And 2% actually is opening the alligator's graph because costs will go up. And if anything, if we get into some revenues from sports betting, that would help mitigate that.
Yep.
That's back, and now we're only page 37 out of 85, and we need to keep going. So,
Madam Chair,
yes,
I'm gonna have to drop off to get my class together.
yeah,
We were scheduled till 3:30, I thought.
we are. What time is it now? 3:31. It's now 3:30. Should we?
Do you want to finish out DCF?
Why don't we finish out DCF and then
We'll start with Dale tomorrow.
we'll start with Dale. DCF, B320, aged, blind, and disabled.
Yep, that looks good.
No, I think it looks horrible to me. If you want to know the truth, this is a state supplement to the federal SSI benefit, and nobody even knows what it is anymore. It is actually a way of addressing the financial status of our poorest seniors and people with disabilities. These are people that, we have all these proposals to exclude more Social Security, which is for seniors and people with disabilities. These are individuals who are getting the federal form of what used to be the old aged, blind, and disabled. And the state, when the program got federalized, added a supplement because otherwise the federal payment was less than what they would be getting.
Well,
We
I,
have increased that for 20 years, and I would say if anybody wants to think about how we address the financial plight of our most vulnerable elderly and people with disabilities, this is right here.
I will have a proposal.
Well, we've already been trying to look at what that might look like. So it's very easy. You can just look at how much you want to add to the state sup and multiply by the household.
I will have a proposal.
Good.
Well, haven't you been, somebody's been already looking at that. Stephanie, I think we had asked to have something. So it would be on the enhancement list. It would be a base increase. There's no question about it. But if you want to spend money, and many of these individuals actually are children. And we know that kids with disabilities, they come with a certain cost. So I'm just, and many people, even advocates for elderly aren't, don't even know. So I'm keeping this open. Well, no, we'll close it as it is. And then if we can find any money to deal with it, we will adjust accordingly.
Oh, really?
General assistance, this is just keeping it, of course, so much of it has come in through FEMA and emergency and the rental assistance that's still out there. So 3 squares, that's just the cash out section of the benefit. The rest goes directly and doesn't get appropriated. Last I knew, this was a huge program. At one point, it was over $100 million goes into Vermont economy from that program. So this is cashing out is rather than getting any restricted, it's just a cash equivalent that goes out to households who are seniors or with disabilities. And then Reach Up is next. Reach Up is next. And that is just reflecting the lower caseload. And there are a number of Reach Up bills, I think, to disregard more income or something that's floating around. The other option is if we have fully funded SSI policy, we simply want to, this would give more earnings disregard. If we fund a child tax credit that's progressive, that would be a major way of assisting these families. So that's where we'll take it as it is right now, subject to other decisions. And then LIHEAP is just moving through the federal funds.
And this usually reflects the baseline grant. It does, often there's additional federal funds that shows up usually.
And then we've got the House, there was a request to add a new service, a new program that's out there. We have information that was sent, and I think consistent with our earlier decision, that goes on the list for consideration. And in addition, DCF indicated when the agency secretary was here that they would need 2 positions to oversee the grants and monitor this new program. So it's not only the 400,000, but it would be 2 positions that would come with it.
The 2 positions were not added by the
No,
House.
then there's no positions. That was something the agency told us. If you want to add this new program and make OEO responsible, they don't have the staff to do that, to do the grants and monitor. So that was part of the testimony we got the other day. So that goes on the list. Okay, and then
OEO weatherization, we do have the one-time section of ARPA dollars. It goes through the OEO program, and then
that was 35? One was 35, one was 45. I can't remember which.
45 for the OEO weatherization.
So we have a total of 80.
and
Plus
40
the
45 is the OEO Sarah's County, and 35 is the more moderate income,
Okay, plus this.
plus this baseline.
So that's over $90 million of weatherization then, in total between everything. So we'll close this out, and then secure residential.
Excuse
I
me.
think, I don't know, Senator Sears, you and I need to talk about what kind of, if there's some language here. Obviously, the proposal to site in Newbury with Beckett is putting a lot of pressure, and what that will look like, and of course the community.
I think the money was spent on placing kids who would have been in a secure residential, and it's looking forward to, evidently, temporarily at least, he's going to have a contract with the Windham County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, that's what I understand. So this is just to cover the cost of treatment.
Yeah, it's the cost for that
I'm
program,
surprised
but
it's even gone, it's less, the governors recommend.
yeah, because, well, I think because we need to talk about it.
Yeah, let's hold this, and then disability determination, that's pretty much federally funded function. So that gets us down through DCF, and I think probably page 40, so that's a good place to break. We got halfway through it. Okay, so with that, I'm going to adjourn the committee for today.
Go off live?
And go off lot, and we will